Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that. But don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg Srisavasdi with CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 356. This episode will be highlighted or spotlighted or commandeered, anchored by Bruce Purkey over at The Attic. He has his reviews for this week. Due to time crunches and just a lot of other things, I don't have any other movies to add that I didn't add before a couple of days ago on episode 355. There might be a couple of movies that I will add on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. However, there is a movie called White Nights from filmmaker Luchino Visconti. It's, I believe, a remastered version of it. It's going to be playing in theaters on Friday, so I might cram that in tonight and do some sort of review maybe on the YouTube channel or write it up on Deepest Dream. Also, there's that movie Once that is part of our CinemAddicts movie club pick of this week. No one picked it. It was a club pick due to the recent passing of Glenn Hansard. I haven't seen Once, so I'm excited to see Once tonight. And what happens is every Friday, maybe a little bit of Saturday, every Friday-ish, every Friday, the CinemAddicts Movie Club, we talk about the movies we watched the previous week or the pick of the week. So tomorrow we'll be talking about Once. There's about 14 or 15 not main members, just the original members of the CinemAddicts Movie Club. And we are tasked with picking the movies for our CinemAddicts Facebook page every given week. If you are a member of that inner circle of that movie club, meaning you will have the responsibility once in a while to pick your own movie for us to watch, you will be automatically entered into our weekly DVD, Blu-ray, or digital codes giveaways. So think about that. First of all, join our CinemAddicts Facebook group, which is called the CinemAddicts Movie Club. And then once you join up, email me at editor@deepestdream.com for more information on how to get into the 14 to 15 movie picker inner club. And that way you can be entered into our weekly giveaway automatically. All right, so that is it. This week I will be, or not this week, tonight I'll hopefully be watching White Nights and Once. Those are the movies I will be talking about, and maybe I will share my thoughts on those movies on our YouTube channel, CinemAddicts YouTube channel. But also want to mention that Bruce Purkey has a whole bunch of movies to review, and that will be coming up in a few moments. Once you are done with Bruce's insightful takes on movies, and let me tell you something, very insightful guy. I do disagree with a couple of movies. Well, there's one movie he does, he reviews that I'm not, he has his own take. Different courses for different horses, or different horses for courses for horses, strokes for folks, tomato, Caribbean. But but it's good. It's good that we have differing opinions, and blessings on that. Now, let me look up right now there is a short film that Eric Holmes did, and it is here it is. It's a movie it is a short called Fortune House. It's the world premiere of this short over at the LA Shorts International Film Festival. Yeah. It's the world premiere of it. It is from AFI Conservatory graduate Yihong Exa Huang, and it is going to premiere on Friday. So if you are anywhere in North Hollywood, it is premiering at the Regal NoHo West in Los Angeles, specifically the Valley. And Fortune House, from LA-based filmmaker and AFI Conservatory graduate Yihong Exa Huang, quote, offers a magical realist immigration fable as a desperate immigrant delivery driver stumbles onto a mahjong parlor run by three demons, where he enters a demon's deal, win the game, and they will grant him a green card. Blending magical realism with dark humor, the film transforms the anxieties, compromises, and hidden transactions of immigrant survival into a Faustian bargain, asking a single question: when the powerless are forced to negotiate within a system rigged against them, what do they have left to put on the table? This incredible next generation of Asian filmmakers are taking experimental leaps in blending magical realism, which audiences and critics embraced wholeheartedly in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And that is Fortune House. If you want more information on Fortune House, check out Eric Holmes' interview again with that filmmaker, Yihong Exa Huang. And I will leave a link of where it will be available. Again, it's a 24-hour turnaround. Hopefully, if you are a fan of shorts, this might be for you, and especially if you're in the LA area. So that is it. A couple things. Bruce Purkey is coming over. He's just banging the drum over in the attic with his astute and insightful movie reviews. And then after that, check out Eric's interview with the director of Fortune House. That's it for my babbling. Here is Bruce Purkey over at the Cinematic.
Welcome to the Cinematic, the attic of cinema, where I climb down the creaky ladder from the dusty attic room that I am kept in for the entire week, watching movies, much like Mystery Science Theater 3000, except some of them are actually good. I don't know. They're just random movies that are thrown at me by Greg and Eric, and I bring you my report back as to what I thought of them. So, I have 3 screeners this week. One is called Big Baby. The other one is called Late Fame. Another one is called Cookie Queens. What is Cookie Queens? Is that about drag queens that sell cookies? No, not exactly. And then I have a recommendation, probably the top movie of the week, maybe, possibly, called Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. All right, let's get to the movies. Let's start with Big Baby. Big Baby is a horror movie directed by Spider-One. He's made a few other movies, but you might be like myself, and I heard the name Spider-One, and I said, Spider-One? Where do I know the name Spider-One? Isn't that the guy from Power Man 5000? The new metal-ish sort of band from the 90s and early 2000s. Isn't he the guy that's the little brother of Rob Zombie and is trying to make his own way in the music business and was always under the shadow of his more famous older brother? That is the person. That is who Spider-One is. Now, is he now making horror movies? Trying to get under the shadow of his older brother who also makes horror movies and is now more known for horror movies than for music pretty much? Yep, it's the same guy. Does Spider-One cast his own wife as the lead woman role in pretty much all of his movies, much like Rob Zombie, who casts his wife in lead roles in a bunch of his movies? Well, you know what? You'd be right there too. I don't know what's up with Spider-One. I don't know why he can't fully blaze his own trail, but for whatever reason, maybe it's identical twins separated at birth and they just end up marrying people with the same name and ending up with the same jobs even though they don't know each other because there's some cosmic connection to their way of being. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, Baby One was made by... Big Baby was made by Spider-One. I don't know why I can't the two kind of get confused in my brain. Okay, well, there's that. So... starring in this is, as Adam, you have Brandon Scott as Kate. You have Chrissy Fox, K-R-S-Y. I'm assuming it's Chrissy. I don't know. She is the aforementioned wife of Spider-One and also co-creative force. I don't know. And then Big Baby's played by Adam Maranowski. And what is this? What is this basic idea here? Well, Adam is he's a writer. He's a writer of horror movies. In fact, he's recently wrote a horror movie. And as the movie starts, he is really upset because a horror movie podcast has really trashed his movie. And this is the first point where the movie started to annoy me a little bit. And that is, you ever see, there's a lot of times bands, like fake bands in movies are just not right. It doesn't seem right. Sure, they're playing music, but it's not. There's always something a little off and unbelievable about the actual band that you're watching being a real band in the real world. And I seem to have a lot of the same problem in movies with podcasts. A lot of movies now have to throw fake podcasts in their movies because I think they think, ooh, podcasts are the new big thing, which right there is a grandpa dad move that you think podcasts are the new big thing. It seems very dated and weird and just out of touch. And the way that this podcast acts that they show us is out of touch too. It's not totally unbelievable, but there's just something off. It doesn't seem quite right, but whatever. He's really mad that they made this negative review of him and he's complaining, and he and Kate that are together are both commiserating over it, and he needs to write something new. He has this nightmare where he sees this big baby character, which literally is a guy dressed in a giant onesie, like a leather face, but with a big baby mask. And he sees this big baby come and murder his wife in his dream. He's so relieved that it was a dream, but now he's obsessed by this idea, and he starts writing it. And the whole movie then becomes him, is it or isn't it happening thing? Is this a real thing? Is he manifesting this big baby killing creature out of his subconscious anger and angst over his inability to be a successful writer? And by writing this new script, is he making it come to life? Or is it all just an imagination? Or is he in a fugue state, dreaming and imagining and doing it himself? It could be all those things. The main actor, once again, is really engaging, and there's a level of humor here. You can see to some degree, they're making fun of him as a human being, like being so butthurt over his reviews and not being able to just be what he is and just live with the bad reviews. And I think that's the duality of the big baby. He is also the big baby in some ways because he just can't just be what he wants to be and get over it. And in that aspect, I appreciate what they were going for here. But the problem is, it doesn't really go wholeheartedly into that. It wants to also be a cheesy throwback, 80s-ish slasher movie with this big hulking, character, a new iconic character that's going around chopping up people with axes and stuff. And as it goes more and more to that territory, it becomes, to me, less and less interesting. Now, I'd love a good, just basic, gory throwback slasher movie. I'm down for that. That'd be cool. But it has to be interesting and it has to be cool. And unfortunately, it's really not interesting. And as it goes on, it becomes more and more, like I said, is he imagining it or is it really happening, the thing? There's a lot of elements that are very Shining-esque, where it's like, is he going mad? Is he causing it himself? Is he haunted by a spirit of this quote unquote big baby? And it had to put its foot in one camp or the other and let us just really fully go with that, I think, to make it work. And I'm going to get into a light spoiler here. Once again, I think they've already spoiled it on the other review that Greg and Eric gave. The other part that really was disappointing was in this last third. There's supposed to be a point where basically the big baby character is threatening to murder Kate if Adam doesn't finish the script. So in the final third of this, we keep seeing the enactments of the script he's writing with all the new murders to finish it, because he has to finish it to keep her alive, right? That's the idea. So we'll see typing across the screen of what he's writing. Exterior, bar, Joe, mid-30s, Jane, mid-30s, in truck. And then you see the whole scene of they're in a truck, they get attacked by Big Baby, they get killed. And after they get killed, you'll see across the screen, Joe, dead. And I was just like, okay, but this is the most basic, lazy way to just throw 6 random kills at the end of this movie that have nothing to do with the plot whatsoever. It's just, I don't have a full 90-minute movie yet. Let's make it into a 90-minute movie. Let's put a bunch of kills at the end, which on the plus side, we get some kills. Finally, something's actually happening here. But on the negative side, it's so uninteresting. And when I was watching that, I was thinking to myself, what a huge missed opportunity this movie had. If you're going to set up this scenario where, he's going to write these scenes and the scenes are going to happen, you could have had a ton of fun with that. And this movie wants to have a little bit of a sense of humor. So why didn't it do things like when he's writing it, Jane walks through the door and is attacked by Big Baby with a machete. And then you could see him as a writer like stopping, oh, that's terrible, that's so hack. And then the scene backs up and then maybe he writes something else and something else happens. So it almost could become this humorous thing where you're watching him control and keep recontrolling and keep recreating this world to try to make it interesting. And then that could have been fun. The closest it got to that is at one point, one of the people is killed. And then Big Baby, after the person is killed, Big Baby cuts the person's head off. And it says, now person is really dead. It's like, funny. But that was the idea, is that you could do that thing, but really roll with it. And the movie just didn't have enough interest in really playing with the concept to make that a whole thing. Plus, I kept thinking as I was watching it, well, couldn't Adam just say, and now the story is done, and it would be done? Because that was all he said. You have to finish the story or she's going to die. He didn't say you have to have 10 kills and then it'll be done and I'll let it die. So it was just really half-baked in that way. And the Big Baby character was fine, I guess. But I don't know. On a year when we had Dolly, which I think could be comparable in some ways, and Dolly had so much more creativity and so much more gore and so much more just... It really went for it in a lot of ways, and I thought it was really fun and a cool, interesting throwback with all of its homages on its sleeve too. That something like this is just a really pale version of that sort of thing. It was just not. And the ending was just, I'm not even going to get into the ending. It was just, once again, didn't care, unsatisfying. It had, I think, all the actors in here, even making fun of the whole having your wife in your movies thing, she did fine. All the actors were good here. They were all engaging. I really, really liked the main character. His friends were weird and quirky too. You could have had a real fun time with this situation. Maybe just take out the whole writer aspect altogether and make it a real crazy killer after him. Just how are they going to survive? I don't know. There could have been a lot of things that made it more interesting than it was. And unfortunately, I can only go 2.5 stars on Big Baby. If you're a diehard horror fan, you're going to get a little bit here, but not much. And if you're not a horror fan, you're probably going to get even less. And even the kills themselves were pretty boring. There's, I think, one okay kill of a person near a pool that was pretty gory and somewhat interesting. And that was probably the only thing in the whole movie, like horror-wise, that was a halfway recommend. So 2.5 stars. Missed opportunity is what I say. Missed opportunity. The ingredients were there, but it was literally and figuratively half-baked. You got not baked cookies you don't want to eat. There's a slop. All right. Next up is Late Fame, directed by Kent Jones, starring good old Willem Dafoe, which is literally becoming old. He's probably older than me now. He's probably 70 or something. Willem Dafoe as Ed Saxberger. You've got Gloria, played by Greta Lee. These are the two big giant names in this movie. You also have Myers, played by Jake Lacey. He's the main instigator of some of the events in here. And what is Late Fame? So Ed is working... Gosh, I already forgot what he does as a job. Is he works at a post office, I think? What does he do? I already forgot. He works at that's not a good sign, is it? He works basically just as an everyday worker in New York, just doing blue collar work. He does a job, he goes home, whatever. He's just an older guy. He seems relatively content with his life. He has friends he hangs out with. He goes plays pool, drinks. Nothing. He's not down in his luck. He's not living the high life. He's living a pretty average, satisfied sort of life. And then one day on his way home, before he steps into his building, that was his name, Myers guy. Myers stops him and says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And Ed's like looking a little suspicious, like, "Well, what? What do you want me for? It's New York. You're not going to just stop someone on the street and say you want to talk to him. There better be a reason." Anyway, it turns out that in Ed's heyday, like back in the 70s or something, he was a part of the poet scene, the cool art poet scene, and he had written a book of poetry that at the time, it sounds like at the time, wasn't a huge hit, but in the circles he worked in, it was considered really good. Once again, he's a poet. How big are poets going to ever be? But even in his day, he wasn't world famous, but in his own little group, he was known to be a good writer. And Myers, it turns out, is part of a young, hipster, sort of a writer's revival sort of a thing. And he hunted down Ed, and he wanted to tell Ed, "We love your book. We think you're a genius. Would you ever consider just coming and meeting the group and just saying hi to them and whatever, and showing..." They'd be blown away that they got to talk to you. So think of it like, I don't know, what would be another equivalent of this? Like, I don't know, a bunch of hipsters who hang out at a artisanal brewery and in the current day and love jazz from Nigeria, and they just happen to notice that one of the Nigerian jazz greats who happens to live in the Bronx is working next to them, and they bring him over and that kind of thing, right? So anyway, he goes, and it's a bunch of spoiled rich kid types who all pontificate over whatever work they're doing and how awesome they are and how no one appreciates true art anymore. And they're a little bit gaga over seeing Ed, and he's very awkwardly flattered sort of in the back of his mind, but he's also a little bit, I don't know, tentative to engage too much with them. But he can't really, I mean, someone's saying they love his book from 40 years ago or 50 years ago, and no one even knows who he is in his real life now, so he is drawn into that world. Part of that group, too, is Greta Lee's character, once again, Gloria, and she's an outsider. First of all, these other dudes are all dudes. They're all, like I said, very hipstery, insular guys that are all into their very niche thing. And she is very larger-than-life acting with a giant A, you know, real, almost like she's acting as a very overacted part in her own life, is how it comes across. And she wants to be the most fabulous thing in the room whenever she steps in. And these guys lap that up. They're all somewhat, I don't know, in love with her, but they're also just blown away by her presence, that she'd be hanging out with them. And she's just, like I said, eating up the mini spotlight that she's got in this group of eight young hipstery dudes. And that's the whole setup. The whole setup is they're trying to put together I don't know, not even a show per se, but let's just call it a celebrated reading of their own poetry, trying to create in modern times what used to happen back in the day and make this group of creatives and poets and making an event that people want to come out to and experience. And they want to get Ed to come into this and maybe write again and make something new and really give them some legitimacy with his clout from being from that earlier time, even though no one really knows who this guy is, and his friends don't even know he does this. And that is the basic setup of this movie. Now, here's my I don't know. This is not a terrible movie. It's definitely a very slow movie. I guess the hardest thing I had with this movie is I didn't really understand for how slow and focused this movie is on these basic characters, especially the Gloria and Ed character. I mean, they're the main characters here. In fact, at some point, they're starting to have a maybe romance together, but it's very enigmatic. And as much as we're focusing on basically a character study of this older guy who had this artistic life as a young man and is now maybe rediscovering that, aka late fame, it's very odd that we don't really get to know him very well. And that's the thing that threw me off in this whole movie. I feel like I didn't really understand these characters very well. Like, for example, with him, I was constantly wondering, well, is he eating up this fame, I guess? Or is he just maybe trying to bask in the recognition and maybe getting a little of the glory he think he deserved in his youth? Maybe. But then he's embarrassed around his current day older friends because they're all blue collar like him, and he doesn't want them to know that that he used to have this other life. But then when they find out he had this other life, he rubs their face in it like they're not good enough for him. He's too good for them. It's a lot of the motivations are really unclear to me, what he wants and what he's doing. And the same thing applies to Gloria. You get hints that maybe her real life is much more boring and unfulfilled than this over-the-top actor character that she plays, almost like someone would be in Cabaret or something. And once again, it's like I understand the idea of a character who puts on a show in their world to compensate for their feelings of, I don't know, boringness in their real life or just not achieving something in real life, and they put on overdo it in their public persona. But we never really explore it. We just see the edges of it. And I think the whole movie is like that. We see the edges of everything. There's lots of hints. There's hints at Ed's character and what he wants and what he doesn't want, but I didn't ever quite get where we were with his life. Same with Gloria. Same with all the spoiled dudes. Some of them start to have a little bit of character. Meyer's character, we're getting the feel like he's super rich and super entitled to everything he thinks he should have, or maybe he's very, I don't know. this is a very vague way I'm describing this because the movie's vague about it too. I just feel like it was a character study who didn't really want to dig into the characters. And therefore, I didn't really care very much about the characters. I didn't think I didn't understand what the stakes were. If Ed bombed this show, this one big show they're going to have, would it make him feel like a failure again or ever? Or if he does awesome, will it make him feel like he's made it, aka the title, Late Fame? I don't think it ever really answered these questions. And therefore, like I said, I was just sort of checked out through most of this movie. And I was really thought at the beginning, like, oh, this is going to be really interesting, cool little character study, engaged really with this guy and how he either tries to and either achieves or fails, or maybe he feels more like a failure at the end. That stuff I felt like it really could be interesting watching him really try to get back something he had before. But he doesn't seem to really care. Like, he's okay, all right, cool, or whatever. He doesn't seem to really care. He seems to be the same guy he was at the beginning. I don't know. So I'm going to go 2.5 stars on Late Fame too. I can't really see exactly who this is for. Even if you're in here to see two great actors, Greta Lee and Willem Dafoe, spar with each other, not really, no. They're both better and way better in lots of other movies. So go see other movies with them and you'll have a better time, I think. 2.5 stars for Late Fame. Sorry. It seems like something that could have been really interesting and just wasn't. Okay, next up, we've got Cookie Queens, directed by Alyssa Namias. I have Nahmias. Namias, I think is it. This, after those other movies, I was kind of down. I was like, I'm going to bring in movies that I just didn't like that much, but I didn't hate. I was just kind of meh. That's not the most enticing thing for the week. But I saw Cookie Queens, and actually I thought it was a dramatic movie, like Troop Zero sort of a thing, like a very heartwarming kids movie about girls selling Girl Scout cookies. I didn't look that closely at it, but that's my impression for it. Actually, it's a documentary about girls selling Girl Scout cookies, and it still works in much the same way. It is very wholesome, very heartwarming, but actually it scratches the edges of a little bit deeper stuff here than I expected it to. Now, going into it, once I discovered what it was, I was like, this looks like it could just be a giant advertisement for the Girl Scouts of America and selling Girl Scout cookies, which I'm not against it. I mean, Girl Scout cookies are fine, but then you could always wonder things like, well, I mean, they're just forcing these kids to be child labor and just sell them a bunch of cookies, and the girls get a t-shirt saying I sold a bunch of cookies, something like that. And surprisingly, the movie goes into that a little bit, so I was happy about that. And basic idea here with Cookie Queens is we get to meet 4 different girls in 4 different areas, and all of them have different goals, which I made it much more interesting than it could have been. We have Olive. Olive is like your driven high achiever. She has always been a really high achiever as far as she constantly is the one in her area getting the most cookie sales. And she is in, where did I write down where she was from? I think she's in, Charlotte, North Carolina. And right out of the gate, you get the feel that this girl is just either her parents are driving her into the ground or she just drives herself. Money, let's get the numbers. How big were our numbers last year? Let's get our numbers even bigger this year. She's going to etiquette training. It's almost like she is the epitome of that, society girl in training who will be a CEO someday. But at the same time, she seems to genuinely somewhat enjoy it. So it's an interesting dichotomy. And in fact, her parent even calls her at one point an enigma. And she's like, what does enigma mean? And then or enigmatic, and she describes what that means. And she doesn't disagree with it. So, and once again, I like how this movie just watches the girls, doesn't judge them, just shows that in almost every circumstance, there's a positive and negative to it, but all the girls to some degree are actually enjoying the experience. But then all of them are also somewhat doubting or questioning whether they want to do it, continue doing it, or do it again next year. And none of the parents are pushing them that hard either. The parents, at least the way it's presented, they aren't. So anyway, that's Olive. We also get Shannon Elizabeth. She's from El Paso. She's the one who has a moderate goal. When I say big goals, what are big goals? So Olive, for example, she's like the big hitter, right? Her previous record, I forget, they said it was like something like 6,500 boxes or 7,000 boxes, something like that. Whereas Shannon Elizabeth, she's, like I said, in El Paso, her goal is like 2,600. And she, throughout most of the movie, is having trouble making it. And her parents are really there helping her. And she seems really driven to do it, but she also is just, she's not quite the salesman as Olive. You can see her, she's trying, but she's a little bit discouraged. So you're following her and feeling for her. And her parents are a little bit worried because they might have to eat a bunch of money. Because I don't know, I guess if you get all the boxes, you don't sell them, you have to buy the rest. I don't know how that works. That seems not good, but they weren't very clear about exactly how that works exactly. So you're rooting for her to hopefully not just fall on her face, but for a bunch of the movie, she's not doing great. Then you get Nikki. And Nikki is like where is she from? I wrote it down. Chino, that's right. You got to look at Nikki is like the legacy, right? She has two older sisters. Each of her older sisters were like the top sellers in Chino. Her parents are all like, hey, we're going to earn a trip to Europe if you do sell enough here, Nikki. And Nikki is then really trying to come out on her own out of the shadow of her bigger sisters. And her bigger sisters are still in Girl Scouts, barely. They look like they're like 16 or 17. At one point, they even make fun of it. People are going to buy cookies, and Nikki's there with her older sisters, and there's like people are like, "How are you still in Girl Scouts?" to the older sisters. And there's scenes like with the older sisters are doing TikToks, and they won't let Nikki do it because she's too little, that stuff. So you're rooting for her as being like coming out of the shadow and being her own success story. And once again, you're like not sure, like how much is she into it, and how much is it just trying to beat her sisters at this. And then last but not least, the true star of this movie is I want to say her name right. It's Ara, A-R-A. Ara, and she's from San Diego. She's the youngest too. I think she's only, how old is she here? I wrote it down. 5. So the girls that we've been watching are ranging from 12, 8, 9, and then Ara's only 5. And they show her she's diabetic. She seems super intelligent, like she's just like playing classical music on the piano. She's just doing all this crazy stuff, really smart. But she's also just straight up a little kid. She doesn't have a lot of goals. She's not driven. Her goal on this is to make 55. She wants to sell 55 boxes. So right out of the gate, you're rooting for her. And I think the year before she said, my goal last year was nothing, and I sold 5 boxes or something like that. And then she goes, this year, I'm going to sell 55 boxes. And you're just like, wow. And just lots of scenes of her. She's pulling her wagon, and she can barely pull it. She's so tiny. But she's like, nope, I'm going to pull this wagon. And she's trying to do it. And stuff like she can't really eat the cookies because she's so diabetic. But they'll cut them into quarters so she can have a little bit of the cookie. And then she'll talk to people about it when she's selling. Everything she does is adorable. And it's just, you could have watched a whole movie with just Ara. So every time you come back to her, you're just like, oh my gosh, she's got to get her 55 boxes, and you want to see her achieve it. And her interacting with her littler brother, believe it or not, is really cute too. There's one point where she's trying to encourage him. He's got to be like, I don't know what, like 4 or 3. She's talking about how you can achieve your goals. And she's saying, I didn't think I could hold 7 boxes. And while she's talking to him, she's doing this whole thing. She's making him hold his hands out, and she's stacking cookie boxes on his hands, trying to prove to him that he can get 7 boxes stacked up and do it and achieve it. And it's adorable. And so once again, this is just one of those movies that you just go with. It's not as like sickeningly heartwarming as you might worry it would be. It's a lot more of a true look, but it's never going to go super dark. It's not going to say that any of these kids are like hating their experience. And I don't think they do. But once again, I'm sure you could find some, if you just went out and looked, I'm sure you could find some girls that just dread it, and their parents drive them every year to sell so many cookies and achieve and so on and so forth. But how is that any different than parents who drive their kids to be the star on the football team or be the best gymnast or whatever it might be? And in that aspect, I think there's a level of togetherness and family you see happening here in, I would say, all the cases, which is really nice. But the camera and the point of view of the filmmaker is always on the kid. So we see the parents and we see them helping or doing, encouraging or whatever it might be, spending time with their kids. But it very rarely or ever veers away and just focuses on the parents, it almost always stays with the kids. You're really at that kid's eye view and seeing this combination of joy and play and also a little bit of angst because they want to achieve their goals. So there's like this tug and pull there. I really think it's good. It's a very easy watch. And like I said, an antidote. If you've been into some real serious or downer movies or just heavy movies, or like we're here watching indie dramas a lot or whatever, horror movies or whatever it might be. And I was thinking to myself, like, I'm going to watch all these movies that just didn't do anything for me. I want to see something just like a cookie. It's going to give me what I want. It's straightforward. It's going to make me feel good. And it's going to get in and get out and do the job. And I think this movie hits the spot there. I'm going to go 4 stars for Cookie Queens. It's a no-brainer. If it sounds interesting to you, you're going to have a good time with it. Like I say, you don't have to think too much. Now, what would have made it more than 4 stars? If it would have been all Ara, but it was the Ara documentary, I would have had a 5-star movie here, because she is like Pim Zam level of awesomeness as a kid to watch. You can't help but just fall in love with her whole little world there. Also, this is one of those movies at the very end where, like the end of a movie, it's that classic thing where it's like, next year, and this is in a fiction movie, you'll say where they went after that. And you'll have the little captions under the screen, like what happened to them. So you get a little bit of that at the end of this movie too. You want that. Ara did this, and next year she's going to do this. Or after this, they made it to wherever. So you get a little epilogue statement for each of the girls. Yeah. So once again, Cookie Queens, 4 stars. Okay, last up. I caught up with Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. Now, I've never watched Nirvana, the band, the show, and I think this is one of those things where the title is so odd and confusing that if people don't know what it is, they won't watch it, and that's really too bad because it's so much fun. It's so much fun. This is a really hard movie not to at least enjoy, if not fall in love with. Now, I'm going to, once again, I haven't seen any of Nirvana, the band, the show. My understanding is it's a version of what you see here, which is these 2 guys, 2 best friends, Matt Johnson and Jay McCarroll, playing Matt and Jay. And if Matt Johnson, he's the director here too, and the writer. Matt Johnson basically made Blackberry recently. He did another movie, and I can always forget the name of it, where they're going into the whole conspiracy around Kubrick and the moon footage. And then he also did The Dirties. He's a very particular sort of manic, almost found footage-esque style of comedic shooting, run and gun shooting, really energetic, really creative, and to me, very funny. And here it's no different. I think the series, which was in Canada, involves these 2 friends, and they basically make a band called Nirvana with 2 N's. And they figure that way people are going to come see them because they're going to see the name Nirvana and not get that it's different Nirvana because they have 2 N's in it. And that's how they're going to become famous. And the whole idea is that Matt's the guy who's always coming up with a scheme. This is what we're going to do to make a big event and people are going to come and see us. And Jay is the guy who's in the band who comes along with him, and the long-suffering best friend, band member who just suffers through all of the schemes and ideas and plots that Matt comes up with. That's your basic dynamic here. Now, what you don't get about this movie is that it is this very odd combination of things. It has a little bit of a Borat to it. And what I mean, not in the personality and what Borat was, other than the format. The format of Borat was this very weird blending of fictional characters and somewhat hidden camera, real people interacting with this fake character sort of world going on. You get that sort of format in here a lot, where there's stuff going on that we know is staged for this movie with these characters who are playing characters who are themselves too. And you can tell sometimes they're secretly filming their scenes with real people around them, to the point that when you're watching the movie, like in Borat too, constantly asking as the movie's going along, did they actually do this? Did people know they were doing this? Or was this staged and people knew it was staged? Or did this actually happen? There's some stuff in there that's amazing, and you'll just be blown away. And then the other aspect of this movie, so one aspect is a Borat-esque, somewhat real, somewhat fake stuff going on at the same time. And the other big half of this movie is Back to the Future. And you're going to be like, Back to the Future? And I'm going to be like, yes. What if you did a run and gun, low budget, Borat version of a Canadian Back to the Future, really cheap, low budget sequel. That would be this movie. And you're like, what has the Back to the Future got to go with all this? And this is where it gets into a little bit of spoilers. So before I even do anything, I'm going to give this movie 4.5 stars. You should go watch it. It's on Hulu now. Easy watch, fast, super fun, very funny. I mean, this is just a no-brainer. This is already in the running if it won't make it as my favorite comedy of the year. It's so funny in parts, and just the energy level is, it's creative throughout. It's just so much. It's so great. So that's all I can say. Go watch it. If you don't want to know any more spoilers than that, you've got enough to get you involved. There's a crazy scheme to get their band to play this little club, and the whole movie's about that, but it becomes absolutely the most convoluted time-traveling wackiness in a Borat style, where they interact with footage of themselves from 20 years ago. I think that's enough to get you involved. Now, I'm going to give a few spoilers here. I'm not going to go into full spoiler, but just a few things that are amazing here, which made me wonder throughout, and I haven't researched it yet. I want to know how much of this they actually did and how much of it they didn't actually do. And that's a sign of a great movie, when you're like wanting to know, how did they do that? Or did people know they were doing that? Or was that actually real? What the heck was that? Because the tower, what is it? I don't even know the name of it. It's the tower in Toronto, the CN tower, something like that. Basically, it's a giant Space Needle, but it's really tall, way bigger than the Space Needle. And the cockamamie, this is the plan. So Matt decides he wants to get them into this club playing, and if they can get in that club playing, they're going to be famous, and their girls are going to be after them. They're going to be a hit. They're going to be stars. And poor Jay's along for the ride, but Jay's okay, whatever. And they basically, the plan is that they're going to go to the top of the CN Tower. And I guess there's a thing up there where it's like where you can pay, and they rope you up, put you in suits, and you can walk around with no railing, but you're roped up to the railing, roped up to the edge of the building so you won't fall, and you can walk around the edge of the Space Needle thing, basically. Well, they go to do that, but they've already planned to wear parachutes, bring wire cutters. When they get up there, they're going to cut the wire, jump off the tower, parachute down into the stadium, which is right next door, where I think it's the Blue Jays play there, and they're going to parachute into the open roof of the stadium, make a big splash, be on the news, and they'll be able to promote themselves as a band, and everyone will know who they are before they get arrested, I guess. I don't know how that's going to work exactly. So you get all this footage of them actually doing this, and at some point you're thinking like, well, obviously this whole thing's staged, and it's with the agreement of the people in the tower. And other times you're not sure because they're getting stopped by security, and they have to show their wire cutters, and they have to explain why they have wire cutters and come up with an excuse to be let in. And then when they jump off, they mess it up because it's starting to rain and the roof of the stadium is closing. And of course, they just end up landing on the closed roof, which gets them nothing except stuck up there. So gets them in trouble. And you're like, well, Bruce, what does this have to do with Back to the Future? I hear about this big stunt to jump off of this tower. Why is Back to the Future involved? Well, let me tell you. You didn't know, but this, of course, creates a big rift between the two, this whole debacle. What you didn't know is that Matt, I think it's Matt who did it. Matt has basically been turning this giant motorhome they have in their backyard, covered up with tarps. He's been trying to get it all wired up, so it's essentially like the DeLorean. Yes, like a giant Winnebago, but it's like the DeLorean. You don't ask. He just can do it, right? It's just magic. You just believe it because it's the movie, and he believes it because he believes it. And somehow that is going to let them go just a little bit into this is next scheme, right? A little bit into the past, so they can do the stunt correct this time. And that's what sets off a whole chain of events, because as you might guess, they don't end up exactly where they thought they'd end up a few days in the past. They end up way in the past, and that's where they find themselves encountering themselves from 20 years ago. And the themselves they encounter are not actors. It's actual footage of themselves as actual younger people that they found a way to splice together to make it part of this story. So it's pretty great, pretty fun. Hilarious stuff. Once again, like any good Back to the Future, there's a whole bunch of stuff about how you if you mess up stuff in the past, how does it affect the new future? And how does that mess up things and the time continuum and all that stuff? And the wackiness ensues. But at its core, it's all about friendship and two friends that suffer each other's craziness, but also love each other, but also hate each other, and just all the stuff that would go on there. And just the core of it, like I said, is two friends and a hilarious, crazy adventure they go on. So in that aspect, it's Bill and Ted or Back to the Future or whatever you might pick. It's a lot of fun. They would wink at the camera a few times. Like, I think at some point he says, because they're doing so much Back to the Future stuff, he says, I don't know how we're going to do this without getting sued for copyright infringement. And there's that look at the camera. Oh, and I didn't mention that too. Another great aspect of this, in any movie like this, where they're both doing stuff, you're going to have to ask yourself, like, well, if this is supposed to be real, aren't they being watched by cameramen? Like, why aren't we seeing the cameraman? That's always the artifice of a movie like this you're supposed to forget about, right? You can't explain where the camera is. If it's real world, they would be cameramen there, which obviously doesn't make any sense. Well, in this case, there are cameramen there, and they're going back in time with them, and they do get addressed. The fact that there are camera people there with them is part of the story. And it's just, I can't once again explain how much fun and how crazy inventive and cool and just underappreciated this movie is. As well as, like I said, the title doesn't do this movie any favors. You have to really sell people that they should watch this movie. And even though it sounds like I've spoiled a few things, I've just spoiled some basic, I guess, concepts to this movie, but not really the actual events or the actual results of what all this time travel and all these changes actually cause, because there are some awesome reveals. There's some great things that have changed in the future and the past based on things they do to alter it. And just some really great in-jokes. I'm not going to discuss that either. Some great in-jokes about products that only existed 20 years ago that don't exist now, that are key to the success of their mission. So once again, 4.5 stars. It could go up to 5 stars, but once again, also probably my top comedy of the year so far, which we don't get that many comedies every year. So it's a very happy event when we get a great comedy. Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. It's on Hulu. It's only about 90 minutes. It's a no-brainer. If you needed this palate cleansing for your movie brain, you should run, don't walk to check out this movie. You will appreciate it. And that's it. That's all I got this week. Like I said, my top recommendations would be Cookie Queens and Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. And we will see you next week with a bunch of other stuff. I don't even know what I'm going to be watching next week. I'm sure there's some stuff lined up that Greg has found. And as always, on the way out, I will say we miss you, Mitch. We miss you, William. I know in just the last week or so, I think they had a celebration of life for William. I think they waited for the anniversary of his birthday. And I wish I lived out there and I could go to that, but I didn't have a way to do that. But we miss you, Mitch. We miss you, William. And I still want to say F you, ICE. It's still applicable, unfortunately. Hopefully that will not be something that needs to be said soon. And you all have an awesome week, and we will bring you more movies next week. Oh, and last but not least, don't forget, the movie club is still out there. This week we're doing Once, in honor of, and I forget the person's name, that's my bad, the person who's one of the stars of Once, and he just passed recently. So we've been doing a lot of tributes for people who passed recently. We hope we can stop doing that soon. This has not been a good year in that aspect. See you all soon. Talk to you later, and have good movie watching in the coming week.
This is an interesting short. What inspired this whole thing?
So it's a long story. It's around 2 years ago, me and my executive producer Wei, we started doing research about magazine and newspaper, how immigrants looks like, how they go draw on those media at the early 1900s. Because that is the first time they starting to live in this land. Then we find out a lot of image. Let's say we're gonna see a comic. There's Chinese chef head and there's 10 tentacles in the back. They're trying to draw him as a squid monster because they think the Chinese immigrant trying to steal local people's job. And you're gonna see people with long nails and yellow skins, like trying to just do crime. You see it in the newspaper comic world. So we find it very fascinating, and we're starting to collect them at first we're just trying to do monstrology arting, like we just collect those images to make a collective. But as the time goes on, there's more and more that you can find, and there's so many stories happen behind those immigrants' history. So that's the starting point that we just say, okay, it's a good time to do a short story based on this concept, the demons and the immigrants. Yeah.
What's your approach to doing shorts? Because you have the feature length and you got shorts, and they're similar, but there's little intricacies and differences between each one. What's your approach to going with shorts?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I feel like for a short film, you trying to show a glimpse of the world or the human condition. You can't really tell more than that because the time is limited. But the feature is you present the whole world. You're gonna understand this character and probably not only one character. So for this concept, we have the world. We wanted to see if it works or not, and we have a main character. He gonna conquer through every difficulty, like to reach the end. We also want to see if it's working or not, just by showing a glimpse of this world building. Then we can make a decision if we're gonna do more in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with what you have here, though, you don't show the full world, but you definitely got, like you say, hints of it. So it sort of fills in gaps that wouldn't otherwise be there.
Yeah, it's like you just a parachute into the middle of the world and take a look and you can get out. It's just I feel like that's the mission of the short film, to give people a taste and if it's good. And also because short film is hard to measure. I mean, mediocre short film it's already rare than a good feature. There's so many good feature out here, but because short film only have 15, 20 minutes to finish the whole arc. So I feel like, so for my short film, I'm not trying to do too much. I'm just trying to, people got to understand who's those people, what's the world. There's demon, there's immigrants, and there's eyes chasing people out there, and how he gonna do as what person he is. Then if we can get it done, then it's already satisfying enough for me.
Yeah. And to your point, though, I have seen some feature-length movies that probably would have been better served as a short film.
I know.
But so I believe this is premiering on the 7th. What's the life of this after the premiere? Because that's one thing that drawbacks that short films have. Feature length, so you play in theaters or go on streaming. With shorts, they disappear a little bit. It's harder to breathe life into them after they've come out.
Yeah, I know. Like short film is tricky, and also that's like the only things that you can try a little bit at the very first as a filmmaker. And for Fortune House, the reason we were so excited about LA Shorts is because we literally just started like festival run a month ago, and this is the first like news that we got like really fast just in the month. So we're really exciting for that. And after then, we for sure go from a festival, hope to get more screening. And then after a year of a festival run, we're trying to do like more community-based screening, like everyone can ask for it to have the local screening together. Then you're probably gonna go on like streaming, and we're trying to work with some media to publish it somewhere on a streaming platform. That's gonna be like a purpose of the short film. But for this, I had a mini series idea based on this. It's gonna be like a bigger world. There's gonna be like a whole human underground society behind it, and also Mo becoming good friends with them because Demon also stuck between human world and Hill, so they're becoming good friends. But Mo somehow in the end need to send them back to Hill, so you're gonna be through some moral change during this story. So this short also have another mission, is to prove we're not trying to make a fancy, expensive fantasy story. It's more like a dark fairy tale. It's based in reality, and that's the world we're trying to tell. And if you see this short film, interested in to see it in the longer way or see more of this world, then we have a mini series like prepping now. So that's another mission of the short film to prove that how it would look like. Yeah.
And then I'm assuming there's a longer version of this for a feature length in case it takes off, or is this just it and you just move on to the next one?
Probably we're trying to finish the pilot episode of the mini series, but like we need to see how it goes in the future. So yeah, come visit us at the short film screening. That's the starting point we're trying to make. Yeah.
And then I also saw on IMDb, I'm sure there's probably a lot more that doesn't show, but on IMDb it says you got a couple shorts. Where can those be found at? Because this one was really good. I figure anyone that watches this goes, oh, wonder what else they got in store.
Oh yeah, for my previous short, You can visit my website, exahuang.com, and also there's some of them. There's at least most of them is already published online. Yeah, the most recent one is a documentary that made called When the Floors Goes Dark. This one's already on the Face magazine. And they have another one called I Hate Love. It's on Anonymous now. So you can find it on the internet. They already finished the festival run.
Excellent. And do you have any other shorts or ideas, or do you got a feature length, maybe unrelated to this one that you got in mind? Or are you just dealing with this and then you'll worry about that later?
Yeah, I felt like I'm like in a rewriting session of a feature idea, and that's also like an immigrant story, but in a way, a slightly more action comedy way, clumsy action way. It's about a young kid. It's about a young kid. He's an immigrant. He moved to US, and his father said live in China, and he has a shady career. He's selling drugs, and he already dropped out of the school, but his father doesn't know at all. And after 4 years, his father says, "Oh, I think it's time for my son's graduation." So he visits his son, and his son trying to cover everything through this trip. That's a feature story about it. So we're trying to finish we're in the still rewrite now and still in financing process, but we'll see how it goes after this. Thanks for asking.
Well, you have me at action, so I'm in whenever that comes. But so this premieres August 7th, and I guess before I let you go, just want to get a movie recommendation from you. Either a movie that's personal to you or a movie that's like, this is really good, no one talks about it.
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say Atlanta, the show Atlanta inspired us a lot also. Yeah, the show is also about minority situation in the city, in the world. So I've been always a huge fan of it, and I love the way they address some of the comedy plot in the slightly magical realism way, because I feel like as minority you never cope with it just by thinking a lot of it. You can't talk to people thinking about it all the time. That's not going to help you cope with this minority feeling. So we find a cut through that. What about think yourself as a villain? You look different. You might not look as one of them, but you are still the main character. So that's how the demon go with it in the short film that we're trying to address. So I feel like Atlanta have really sharp way to describe how they feel, because it's hard to describe. So we have to find a demon-human situation to describe how they feel. But Atlanta, a lot of episodes they address it in just the urban world. So that's the show I really love. Also related to this short film. So
Excellent.
Eric.